Hi Sean, so today's topic discussion is past, present and future of IT.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
So the first question that we have is, what are the top 3 changes in this sector, so good or bad, that have changed how the sector operates from when you started to obviously now?
I think that's a really interesting question because it's so broad, right? Most questions, when they're broad, they're difficult to answer. But I think in this case, it's quite a simple one. You know, the biggest things that have changed, if you want to start with the most recent, is ultimately the pandemic that we're just living through right now.
Yeah, definitely.
So digital transformation, which was a huge buzzword for so long, but didn't really mean an awful lot, all of a sudden with what's happened in the pandemic has sped up this entire change, i.e. transformation of how we work and live. And if you look at the shift to working from home, which used to be very much a privilege that you earned previously, now is the de facto standard, at least for the time being. So having those setups at home and having the ability to work effectively and productively from home is probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen in recent times. I'd say the second one is how prominent and available high-speed broadband on mobile devices has become. So I typically travel around the world quite a lot for business, and I no longer take my MacBook with me. I tend to do probably 95% of the company can be run off a mobile device. Failing that, I usually have an iPad with me that has 4G connectivity. So the availability of Wi-Fi and 4G around the world at such high speeds is just an incredible advantage to have. That was just.
It's just sped everything up because obviously, well, everything's faster. Like you said, you can just take your phone. You don't need to worry about anything else.
I mean, the fact is that where I live, and I live out in the countryside, I have faster internet on my iPhone than I do on my home broadband. Right? And when you think about things like that and look at developing countries or developing regions or emerging regions, having high-speed mobile data is just the doorway to entrepreneurship for those that are looking to develop themselves in their countries. And then looking for a third big change in IT, past and present, I'd say that probably the one that ultimately means the most to me is that software development, which is where I ultimately began my career, has come such a long way. Right? We have computers now with so much computing power and multiple cores and X amount of bits worth of processing. None of these things existed when I began programming, and everything was single instruction, single line, very, very logical process. Now you have polymorphic coding and you can write applications that run on multiple cores simultaneously. And when you think about it from that basic standpoint and you see what people have been able to develop, the fact that you can have a car like a Tesla that can almost drive itself to most degrees, but not only that, the software that's ultimately responsible for that in such a large object like a car is very powerful. But then look at the software that exists on an iPhone for the Tesla app, where you can call the car to you, right? There's an awful lot of development that's had to go into those matters. And to be able to see the progress over the last 20 to 30 years in that alone, that excites me for what happens in the next 20 to 30 years when you see machine learning and AI involved in coding itself, because
it's almost scary. Yeah,
it can be. I mean, I don't code as much nowadays. I do it almost as a hobby from time to time. But when you think between machine learning and AI, you're ultimately going to have something that somebody wrote as a program, writing its own programs, learning itself. It's going to be very, very interesting to see where things go over the next 10 to 20 years.
Definitely. If you could maybe make like a prediction, where do you think it would go? Maybe in the next 10 years? Or even with Velez, where do you think Velez would be?
Well, I think we're an IT services business, right? We innovate in our space at all times. One of the things, and I just had this conversation this morning with somebody talking about an organization that ultimately has done the same thing day in, day out for the past 30 years and hasn't innovated at all. And I think what we look for is we're an IT services business that deliver services, typically infrastructure based, typically enterprise and data center orientated, but ultimately you have to move with the times. And that's what it's all about. So I think that making predictions are very, very difficult to do because nothing ever comes true. And if you
Very
look at some
true.
of the predictions that were made previously, it's all about it's all about perspective and how you look at them. Because 20, 30 years ago, there were predictions for multiple points in time that we were going to have flying cars, right? Now, you could be disappointed and say, my BMW or my Vauxhall doesn't fly. But actually, we do have flying cars. They're called airplanes.
True.
It's how you look at them, right? What
Mm,
is a flying car? It is a vehicle to transport people from A to B through the air. Well, that's an airplane. So we do have them.
mm.
Perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I like it. Maybe don't make any predictions in case they don't come true then. So now we've talked about obviously the changes that have happened. If you could change one thing in the IT sector right now, what would it be? If it was anything and you had control, what would you change?
I would probably put more control and regulation around how things like social networks are run. I think that freedom of speech is a wonderful thing, and we're all entitled to it. And obviously, we want to be able to move on as a society, as a civilization. But I think there's been an awful lot of, what has gone around as fake news or misinformation. The fact you can advertise anything you want to a billion people on Facebook plus for a few dollars, and that advertisement can say anything that it wants to say. There's no regulation around it. It's very, very disheartening and worrying. And if you look at technology now, like deep faking videos, I don't know if you've seen deep fakes.
Yeah.
People are able now with AI and machine learning to map somebody's face and put it on another body in video. And
Yeah.
some of them are absolutely incredibly accurate.
Yeah, I've seen a few. They're amazing.
And there was a recent video of a political leader in the world where they mapped a political leader's face onto somebody else's body and did the voice. And this person, we shall say, gave a political statement that caused a riot and an uproar. But that person never said that. That person
Yeah.
was never even in the same location as where it was recorded, but it was one of these deep fakes. And it was advertised and politicized over social media. So where there's no regulation, where there's no rules, ultimately, we're going to find ourselves in a very difficult place. So that's probably the biggest change I would make right now.
Yeah, it is scary, and it's almost you go wrong with either way you go with it, because if you make rules then constricts people, freedom of speech and things like that, but you kind of need some regulations there in place to, like you said, like protect people. It caused a riot and things like that do happen. If that's what's happening now, imagine like in the future. You never know.
We have laws around, driving cars. Yeah.
Yeah.
You are allowed to drive a car once you pass a test, and as long as you are wearing your safety belt. If you
Mm,
don't do those two things, you're not allowed to drive a car. And I think there's similar things that we can implement with social media, right?
definitely, yeah. Definitely. Um, okay, so I feel like I know your answer to this question because obviously Velez is a very team-based environment. Everyone knows this, but I wanted to ask you: does the IT sector always need a human touch, or is there no room for people in the future of IT?
Until Skynet comes online and the Terminator comes back to get us all. No, look, IT, we're in a business, and business is always about people. You can never shy away from that. And I think, okay, fast forward 20, 30, 40, 50 years when we'll have more robots in place than humans, perhaps. but ultimately somebody has to be there to create them, to invent them, to program them, or whatever it might be. That'll vary over time. But I think in the space that we play today and in the forthcoming years, you absolutely need a human touch. There's nothing worse than calling customer services and being told your call's important to us
Yeah.
for 45 minutes, right?
Mm.
Whereas you call our line and within a couple of rings, a real person answers the phone. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think no matter what business you're in, no matter what space you're in, people are paramount. And I think now more than ever, where we're all lacking that connection, and especially on a physical level, there's nothing better than having that level of communication with somebody on a personal level. You know, every call that I do to employees in the organization, the camera is on straight away. And I don't look, you know, it doesn't matter if I don't look my best like today, or if you know, somebody feels like, you know, they can't turn their camera on. Well, that's fine, but I will do it because I want to demonstrate that having that personal touch, despite being a heavily automated software-based IT services business, we've still got to have that little bit where we can.
Yeah, definitely. Do you reckon that'll maybe disappear in some of, some IT companies in the future? Because like you said, when companies get bigger and like they expand, it's hard to put a face to that company. It's hard to see that human side. So do you reckon that'll disappear in the future or?
I think that's just down to the company itself, right?
Mm.
I mean, what you see is someone like me who will call people up all the time and want to talk to people. Despite being very, very busy, it's my priority that people have an interaction with me, because I feel that is a priority, that people understand that they can reach out and speak to me whenever convenient. The bigger the company, the harder it is to achieve. You know, we're not a small business anymore. You know, we have a lot of people, we have a lot of responsibilities, and we all have a lot to do, right? And when we hold things like, you know, we've been holding these monthly town hall meetings where we get everyone together, albeit virtually, right? If you put every person on that video call for an hour, that's not a 1 hour call. That's a 1 hour times how many employees you have.
Mm.
All of a sudden, that becomes a very expensive call if you add up everyone's hourly rate, if you looked at it that way. But also just the time, right? But I feel that putting that time in is a benefit, not a detractor.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, you know, there are organizations that I know CEOs of that are 1,000 people, and they still do those all hand meetings, or they still try and get out there and see as many people as they can in the organization, because there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than working for a company where you go, well, we have a CEO, or we have a VP, or we have a director, but I've never seen him before.
Mm.
That's so demotivating, because ultimately you feel like you're checking in and checking out 9 to 5, and it's just a job.
Yeah, it's not getting recognised. I mean, I guess that's different for Velez. I'm pretty sure everyone's seen the awards all over LinkedIn about
Yeah.
everyone being recognised. It's really lovely.
Yeah, we do awards, and you know, one of the things that we are very, very passionate about is the people, right? Ultimately, because that's how the business runs. And you know, we don't make this data public, but we do an awful lot around performance management, and we do a lot about well-being, and you know, we track what's called Employee Net Promoter Score, ENPS, which is ultimately a scoring of how the general feel of our company is, how people are feeling, you know, whether they enjoy the work they do, whether they find it valuable and fulfilling. And, you know, a barometer of a successful ENPS score might be something around the 70, 75 mark, right? That shows people are generally engaged and happy.
Yeah.
Our results are consistently 90 to 92 out of 100. And,
It's really great.
you know, there have been dips. I think the lowest we've dipped to was probably 75 at one point, and that was through a difficult period where we were reorganizing and reshuffling some people around. But if the general consensus of the people in the organization is net positive, then I think we're winning.
Is that what you base, the success on then? Obviously, it's about, I don't know, the obvious factors, growth, money, things like that, team members. But like you said, that's obviously important to you. So is that kind of how happy your team is almost how successful the team is?
If I have 100 people in the company and the general consensus is a 90 plus on our score, or if I had 1,000 people and we were averaging 40% or a 40 score, I know which one I'd rather have.
Yeah.
All this data and all these data points are anonymous, so I can't say necessarily that Sally is unhappy with how her manager treats her. What I know is generally people are happy, but in this department here, there's a lower sentiment. So I know that I need to go and speak to that manager or that director because someone in their department is not happy. But ultimately, it's phone calls and video calls like this, right? This one's being recorded, so you might not tell me if you're unhappy, but as a rule of thumb, right, I try and have conversations with everyone I can, and that information flows throughout the business because it's the people that make things work. It just is. And I just did a podcast earlier today where we talked about if somebody in the organization is unhappy, how does that then reflect when they have a client call?
Yeah.
If you're unhappy, if you're having a bad day and you speak to a client, are you being authentic if you mask that and pretend to be happy? Or are you more authentic if you go, yeah, I've had a bit of a rough day? But with our clients, most of our salespeople especially have great relationships, like fantastic relationships with our clients. So they kind of feel confident and comfortable enough to go, yeah, it's a tough day today.
And people respect that honesty as well, don't they? Because it makes it more relatable. Obviously, especially now, no one's having a perfect day every day. People respect that honesty. They feel like they can talk to you more. And like you said, you try and speak to most people if you can in the company. And people really do respect that.
And I think it's that whole understanding that, and people argue this fact when they say we're in it together. We are and we aren't. Okay, I think that's the truth of the matter that most people daren't admit to. We are and we aren't. We're all trying to get through this, and we're all in similar circumstances. But the fact remains is that I was on a management call on Monday, and my 4-year-old son climbed on my lap and wanted to show everybody on the management call his new Lego figures, right?
Oh,
That's more relatable and understandable now than it was 18 months ago.
yeah, definitely.
Somebody was on a management call and that happened, you'd be like, come on, can you keep your kids in check, please?
Mm,
Unfortunately, right? We have become more human now, I think, than ever before because we
yeah.
now sympathize and empathize with people because we're going through similar things together.
Do you think that's a positive then? Because obviously, like you said, since whenever you could say 18 months ago, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I think now is we're really focusing on people's mental health, work-life balance, or you say work-life integration, don't you? But yeah, do you think that's really focused on more now and that's a positive for businesses?
It's definitely a positive. I think there are a lot of business owners that are struggling with this
Yeah.
because a lot of business owners or leadership teams historically of companies that have been around for some time have tended to look at their employees as resources. That the whole wording behind HR, human resources, right?
Yeah.
We're in the middle of rebranding that whole department to people operations, right? Because it's the operations around people, and people are what we
Yeah.
care about. But historically, a lot of business owners have looked at their employees as resources. You are worth 40 hours a week to me.
Yeah.
And you could be Sally, John, Sue, or Tom. I don't care. And that's been, a real negative in today's society as people look at their employees in that way. And that's not uncommon, right? And so the way that we try and approach that is, everyone's a human being. Everybody has good days and bad days. Some people absolutely love working out of their bedroom, right? Some people love grabbing the fluffy pillows from the bed there and, just holding on to it while they're working, whatever it might be. But then you have other people who they've got siblings in the house, they've got parents, they've got, whatever it might be, and it's a huge distraction.
It does make it difficult.
And the rules are fairly flexible at the moment, where it's, if you can work from home, do. If you can't, come to the office, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we've left the doors open for those who do need to come in. But ultimately, you've got to have that people-focused approach to your business. Otherwise, they'll go somewhere else where they are.
Exactly, yeah. You're winning, really. How many people are in the office then, if you've left the doors open? I'm guessing it's not that busy.
It's not that busy at all. And when you look at those who are coming in and out, we've got plenty of space in between us. Nobody's congregated together, and we're remaining safe. Obviously, we've got all the PPE and
Yeah.
tons and tons of hand sanitizer, which is
Velez hand sanitizer as soon as you come in, haven't you?
yeah, exactly. So as soon as you get to the door, outside the door, there's a sanitizer on the wall. As soon as you come in the front door, there's another sanitizer. As soon as you walk in, everything's cleaned down multiple times a week, and so on and so forth. So we do everything that is required, and then some more. But ultimately, again, ultimately it's down to the people, right?
Yeah, that's what it's based on.
Where do you feel safe? What makes you feel safe? And let's try and address that. And if having, a fluffy pillow makes you feel safe, bring one in.
Might have to bring mine into the office when we come back in. Okay, so to finish off, I know that you are pretty private about the predictions about Velez and everything like that, which you should be, I guess. But since we've been talking about past, present, future of IT, what do you think, or what do you hope would happen in the future that will maybe help Velez, I don't know, grow, or where do you want it to go?
So we're a business that's focused on delivering in the channel, right? Which means that we work ultimately behind the scenes for a lot of large corporates via our channel partners. What we've seen quite a lot of as time goes on is other channel partners, be those partners of ours or partners of other organizations, that have felt the need to go above their clients or go around their clients in the pursuit of profits ultimately. And I think one of the things that I'd like to see, and I hope it comes true, is that there is more transparency from organizations about the kind of businesses that they are.
Yeah.
We happily sit behind our clients and help deliver exceptional service. And if there's ever any conflict or what have you, we're always transparent about that. We've stopped working with certain organizations because they felt the need to go for more profit and try to circumvent us and go directly to our clients, or even above that. So I think going forward in the industry, I'm quite excited to see how this whole digital transformation thing plays out a little bit further as time goes on, how it strengthens the channel, how it strengthens organizations, and how ultimately as an entire sector we start to see a recovery from what has been a very, very traumatic past 12 months.
Definitely. I think this is a good opportunity to throw in your podcast, since it's about the future of IT. So do you want to talk a bit about that while we're here?
Yeah, so we sort of came up with the idea of doing a podcast about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm very busy most days, and finding time to do something like that was almost impossible. I know I'd registered an account about 2 years ago to do so, and I've been on lots of people's podcasts, and a lot of people have said to me, you should do your own because you've got lots of great people in your network to talk to. And ultimately, it's just been a question of time. Now with reduced travel, with a much larger marketing team now that can help in this, and my assistant, she's wonderful in booking and planning all these things. I can now sit down, log into a Zoom call or whatever it might be, and everything is prepared. The research is prepared, the guests are prepared, everything's planned out. And I was saying the other day on one of the podcast episodes that there's 6,000 people in my phone book, right? And I actually had a look the other night, and if we can see this, let's have a look. It's closer to, it's 7,000 contacts in my phone. We're not going to get 7,000 episodes, But there's a lot of interesting people in my network who have got great stories and great backgrounds, and ultimately is also a way of me learning from great people in the industry.
Yeah.
I certainly do not have all the answers, nowhere near. And if I can learn something, or my team can learn something, or if anybody that listens can learn something, then it's a net positive on something that has, it doesn't cost us a lot of money to do. And yes, there's plenty of podcasts out there, but I found what was missing, and the reason that we started the TPM show. And whilst we're in the industry of third-party maintenance, which is called TPM, we've called this the Tech, People and Markets podcast, because those are the three things that matter to us as a company the most: the technology space, the people, and the markets that we play in. What I found in a lot of podcasts were they were one of two things. They were either very, very niche, local, here are the 6 business owners in this small town, and really, I found that I couldn't get anything out of those conversations. Yeah. Or they were on the flip side, which was, here's a Gary Vaynerchuk, a Simon Sinek, a internet popular sensation, which has got tremendous value to give, but a lot of the time, if you take their content, it's very, very repetitive.
Yeah.
Just churned out in a different way every single time. You can pick any of these internet celebrities and you can write in 1 or 2 paragraphs their entire thought process and just regurgitate it 1,000 times in different ways.
Yeah.
So what I found was, let's find lots and lots of very, very interesting people, not only in our IT space, but in different sectors as well. So we've got people from education, from marketing, all sorts coming up. And let's give them a voice. They are not internet sensations. They are not, from the local 5-mile radius. They're from all over the world. And some tremendously interesting people.
Do you think the pandemic has made that a bit harder though? Because obviously you can't travel, you're having to do everything on Zoom. Or do you reckon that's maybe easier, like you said, because you just set it up and it's there?
The way that we've structured this podcast, because a lot of podcasts are heavily scripted, right? I mean, this time and this time, we're going to talk about this part of your life. And between this and this, we're going to, make sure that we touch on these 10 points.
Yeah.
The way that I've structured it, and I preface it every time we record one, is I say to them, this is just like one of our regular catch-ups. We just happen to be recording it.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that you want removing, let us know, we'll remove it. And almost every single episode, there have been some insider information. There's been some special bites that we've had to go, whoa, well, that needs taking out because whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it's usually positive things like, company A is buying company B, but it's not public news yet, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I find that having the unscripted, they're almost like beer or wine or coffee catch-ups.
Yeah.
Produces much more valuable information.
Yeah, it's more laid back. People are more likely to listen to it. I know I listened to the last one while I was doing my work and I got so much done because it makes you feel more, I don't know, laid back and relaxed. And like the IT sector can be so stressful sometimes. It's nice to talk about it in a less stressful and more relaxed way.
Yeah, and they're very light-hearted conversations. And we've had Mick Barry, for example, who, I'm not sure when his episode comes out, but he talks about when he started as a field engineer, he was repairing calculators and typewriters, right? And now he runs a services division of field engineers that are out there fixing servers and big machines and big metal, right? You have your Pete Terrans of the world, who's one of the sweetest human beings on the planet, who talks about the difficulties of transitioning from a big company to a small company, the stresses and the pressures that come with that. And ultimately, as he said, he was an asshole to his family. And this is one of the nicest human beings you'd ever meet.
Yeah.
So I find the way that we've run these is far, far more authentic than anything else out there that I've heard. We're not doing it to, the goal is never to become a #1 Apple podcast, right? The goal is to get all this incredible information and incredible insights and just get that out there to people.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a more human side to it, which is what people really need right now, even if it is across the screen right now. Have you got anything else to add? I think everyone will have enjoyed it because I have. This has been my favourite so far.
Well, I think, one of the things that we've talked about internally is how we can promote more content and get, more information out there, because whilst a lot of people during the pandemic have sat back and sort of tried to reevaluate where they sit and where their position is in the world as an organization or as an employee, one of the things that we're very passionate about is empowering people in the organization. And I'm super happy with everything you've been doing and everything you're doing behind the scenes, right? Because what most people don't realize is that even if I throw together a few bullet points, it'll be someone like yourself that'll turn that into a real piece of content, right?
Yeah.
So as much as these pieces of content are about me getting my voice out there and getting everyone to understand who Velez is and what we do, we're a fast growing company that's got incredible talent within the business. So I just want to say thank you for everything you've been doing behind the scenes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to the whole of Velez, I think.
All right.
Thank you for your time. Bye,
Nope.
Sean.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.